What's the biggest mistake you've watched someone make in their personal life? My 22-year-old son found a girlfriend, teeny tiny little thing. She was 19 but looked 12, cute, chatty, and full of life. She was raised by good parents, made good grades in school until she graduated, and was a cheerleader too. They dated for 2 years. Toward the end of that period, she made some very bad friends and began experimenting with substances. My son didn't want to join her on that road and they broke up. A couple of months later, her parents convinced her to get out of the house she was living in after an arrest, but she refused to live with them. She begged her parents to let her live with me. Came as quite a surprise to me. They had contacted my son and asked him. He said they'd have to ask me. They did and I said yes. I'm a sucker. My son and the girl, Amy, moved in. My son had a job, she didn't. She was on probation and had to complete community service and report to the court. I took her to a local non-profit where she met questionable new friends there for the same reasons. I gave her a stern warning about friending those kinds of people. Oddly, she listened and behaved. I also took her to her OBGYN. I wasn't about to put her and my son in the same room together without birth control. Turns out she had contracted a serious STD from someone she'd been with during their brief breakup and gave it to my son. They both had to be treated. Things went well for several months. I helped her get a job as a nurse's aide at a local nursing home. She completed her community service and completed her probation. She became the daughter I never had and I was quite fond of her. There were several times my son annoyed me enough for me to want to kick him out. But I didn't mind her at all. She gained a little weight, was almost always cheerful, but when she'd get moody or grumpy over nothing, it actually made me laugh. A day came, however, when the two of them were becoming a pain and I told them it was time to go. They were both working, had cars, were paying their bills. It was just time. They moved out. That lasted about another 4 months. They broke up, my son moved out, and she moved back to the bad people. I followed her on social media and watched as she grew pale and lost weight. I prayed for her every day and missed her bouncy personality. One morning, one of her friends posted on her social media account a request for prayers. She was driving her best friend to the emergency room. She'd been badly beaten. I contacted her parents who said they'd failed to convince her to press charges and she refused any help. It seems she preferred to move back in with the crazies. I couldn't understand it and wondered if I should have reached out. I'm sorry I didn't. A year and a half ago, her mother posted on social media that her Amy had gone to heaven. I cried for 2 hours. I actually howled. I've only cried like that one other time in my life, but that's another story. I didn't realize that I actually came to love that little girl. She wasn't mine, after all. I called her mother. According to her, Amy had found a new boyfriend who got her hooked on stronger substances. He regularly abused her when she'd steal more than he wanted her to have. After being arrested and released from jail, he returned home. He accused her of cheating on him, which she may very well have done. He spent hours violently using her as a punching bag until she died. She weighed 78 pounds at the time. He waited 3 days to call the police. He claimed he just returned home and found her like that. The investigation required waiting for DNA evidence. He was never arrested for it. I wasn't able to attend the funeral, as I had to attend one for my uncle. I sent my son and when ordering flowers, I broke down and cried at the florist's. A lot of people would call me stoic. I wondered why I was so emotional about it all. The asshole was finally arrested for something else just as heinous. He had figured out a way to live with an older woman. Like in her 40s. The police showed up when they received a call that someone was being held at a house against their will. They discovered a man tied up in a woman's body in one of the bedrooms. He was found walking around brandishing a gun. They arrested him for kidnapping and a few other charges. He's in prison now waiting to discover his fate. He may never be charged with Amy, as her parents are still waiting for the DNA results. Amy was a little firecracker that never got the chance to light the sky.